We resume the investigation by stepping into the oldest, most ruthless control room on Earth, the calendar. We aren't talking about the sleek, automatically updating app on your smartphone. We are talking about the brutal, mechanical consensus that forces governments, Supreme Courts, and global supply chains to agree on what the word today actually means. Time is the ultimate settlement mechanism. If a society cannot agree on the time, contracts dissolve, debts become uncollectible, and trade collapses. For over 1,000 years, the world ran on the Julian calendar, a system designed in the days of Julius Caesar. But it had a fatal, invisible flaw. It drifted. It wasn't a sudden crash. It was a silent leak. The calendar was off by just over 11 minutes a year. In the span of a single human life, it was a rounding error. You ignore it. But time compounds. Century after century, that error grew into a massive systemic crisis. By the 1500s, the mathematical spring equinox on paper had dangerously decoupled from the physical sun in the sky. The calendar was 10 days out of sync with reality. When you run a massive chronological infrastructure without an audit for that long, the tiny glitches you ignore eventually threaten to bring down the entire system. The agricultural planting seasons, the deadlines for taxation, the massive religious festivals, everything was tied to a clock that was demonstrably failing. The authorities realized that if they didn't intervene, the desynchronization would eventually destroy the legitimacy of the administrative state. You cannot govern a continent if the sky and the paperwork are telling two completely different stories. It was a crisis of reality itself. The timeline required a brutal, unprecedented intervention. The intervention finally arrives in 1582, and it hits the system with the force of an earthquake. Under the strict directive of Pope Gregory XIII, the calendar is forcibly hacked. A decree is issued that alters the fabric of time. When the sun sets on Thursday, October 4th, the next morning does not become October 5th. It officially becomes Friday, October 15th. 10 entire days are simply erased from existence, deleted from the human ledger. It was a drastic mathematical correction to violently realign the paper calendar with the physical solar system. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering your government just skipped a week and a half of your life. Rent is still due, debt still mature, but the days physically do not exist. This wasn't religious symbolism. This was raw, operational dominance over reality. But imposing a new timeline is a highly volatile political act. The Pope could issue the mandate, but he couldn't force rival nations to accept it. Catholic states absorbed the shock and switched their systems quickly, but Protestant nations fiercely refused the update, viewing it as a papal conspiracy. Suddenly, national borders transformed into literal time zones. If you crossed a frontier in Europe, your date instantly jumped forward or backward by 10 days. International trade became a nightmare of chronological calculation. It took centuries for the world to fully synchronize. England and its American colonies stubbornly held out until 1752. When they finally adopted the Gregorian patch, riots broke out in the streets, with citizens demanding their stolen 11 days back. The world learned a harsh practical lesson during this chaos. The timeline we live on isn't a natural law. It is negotiated, fought over, and heavily enforced by those in power. We now open the legal archives. If the first phase of this investigation was about the mathematics of time, this phase is about how a calendar transforms into the absolute framework of a civilization. This is the moment where time stops being an astronomical observation and becomes a weapon of mass administration. To understand the world we live in today, we must look at the Roman Empire not as a collection of marble statues, but as a high-functioning machine of legal control. The calendar was its operating system, and the law was the code that ran it. The crucial turning point hits in the year 313. Emperors Constantine and Licinius issue the Edict of Milan. This is the massive legal settlement that ends centuries of persecution for early Christians. It instantly grants legal toleration, freedom of worship, and the restoration of seized property. It is a fundamental shift in imperial policy. But a forensic investigator looks beyond the religious freedom. We look at the logistics of the state. This wasn't just a spiritual mercy. It was a tactical reorganization of human assets. The empire was struggling with internal friction, and Constantine realized that a fractured population cannot be efficiently taxed or governed. By legalizing the movement, he didn't just free the believers. He integrated them into the imperial bureaucracy. But the real power move comes later, when the weekly rhythm of human labor gets aggressively regulated. Most people hear the phrase Sunday law and immediately assume it's just about church and sermons. But a forensic investigator reads it like a state compliance regulation. We look at the legal text preserved in Roman imperial compilations. In March 321, Constantine issues an unprecedented order. All judges, urban populations, and tradesmen must cease work and rest on the venerable day of the sun. Think about the sheer scale of this intervention. For the first time in history, the state reached into every shop, every court, and every marketplace to stop the gears of commerce by decree. It was the invention of the weekend as a mandatory social contract. But there is a massive economic loophole explicitly written into the law. Agricultural workers in the countryside are exempt. They must continue their labor so the vital harvest isn't ruined by bad weather. This isn't just about spiritual devotion. This is the state carefully negotiating gross domestic product. The emperor knew that while the city could sleep, the stomach of the empire could not. We draw a direct line. The calendar dictates the courts dictate labor, and labor dictates the economy. When the 7-day work week is strictly standardized by law, entire markets synchronize. A common rhythm eliminates friction. It brilliantly embeds moral and religious language directly into civic time. The boundary between before and after wasn't a single flash of light. It was a long, grinding chain of administrative decisions, monk calculations, papal hacks, legal toleration, and state-regulated labor. Institutions forced it into reality, document by document, until the old world was entirely overwritten and the new timeline became the only reality we are permitted to inhabit